наконец, это обеспечение безопасности в сфере и суверенитета, в сфере экономики, технологического суверенитета. Мне думается, здесь вот прямо сейчас, отвечая на ваш вопрос, нет необходимости раскрывать все эти направления, но уверен, что аудитория здесь находящаяся, да и вся страна прекрасно понимает, что без этого существовать Россия не сможет. Финансово-экономический, технологический суверенитет – это будущее каждой страны, включая Россию. Так что вот это основные, если концептуально сказать, направления.
Вот как раз про экономику. Очень многие в мире ведь удивлены, что российская экономика не рухнула под давлением этих так называемых наших бывших партнеров. Но ведь не скрывается ими цель, что нас нужно додавить, придавить, прямо такими словами вот они говорят. Какой вообще у российской экономики запас прочности?
Достаточный для того, чтобы не просто уверенно себя чувствовать, но и идти вперед. И этот запас прочности, мы же тоже много раз об этом говорили, но, повторю, обеспечен несколькими составляющими. Первое, это самое главное, это высокая консолидация российского общества. Второе, это устойчивость финансово-экономической системы страны. Как оказалось, это было удивлением для наших так называемых партнеров, если по-честному, для многих из нас, что за предыдущие десятилетия Россия накопила этот запас прочности и устойчивости в финансах и экономике. Ну и третье, безусловно, это возрастание возможностей нашей силовой составляющей, армии и органов безопасности.
Но если говорить об экономических показателях, вот конкретных, чем можно гордиться?
Да, знаете, как это обычно делаю, я принес с собой табличку, ничего здесь такого нет. Того, чего мы, наверное, не знаем. Да, вчера, по-моему, министр финансов некоторые цифры озвучил. Самый главный показатель роста экономики, рост валового внутреннего продукта по концу года ожидается 3,5%. Это хороший показатель. Это значит, что мы отыграли падение прошлого года, а там у нас было, по-моему, 2,1%. Если в этом году будет плюс 3,5, то значит отыграли падение и сделали достаточно серьезный шаг вперед. К сожалению, у нас подросла инфляция. Это так. Где-то к концу года ожидается 7,5, ну, чуть, может быть, больше, к 8%. Но Центральный банк, правительство принимают необходимые меры. Мы можем еще об этом поговорить. Я имею в виду поднятие ключевой ставки и некоторые другие меры, которые ЦБ и правительство принимают. И исходим из того, что нам удастся вернуться к целевым показателям. Затем промышленное производство растет уверенно 3,6%. Но что особенно радует, это растет обрабатывающая промышленность. 7,5% будет по году. У нас давно такого не было. Давно не было такого. Но, а вот что особенно настраивает на такой позитивный лад, это 10% рост инвестиций в основной капитал. Что это означает? То есть сегодня у нас рост в промышленности, ВВП очевидный. Плюс 10% в основной капитал на инвестиции. О чем говорит? О том, что гарантированно будет устойчивое развитие на среднесрочную перспективу. Деньги вкладывают, производство будет расширяться, рабочие места будут создаваться. О безработице я еще скажу. Прибыль предприятий составила плюс 24%. Я уже не говорю про банки, но там они заработают по 3 триллиона рублей, свыше 3 триллионов. Конечно, я знаю, и в этой аудитории, и в целом в стране скажут, ну вот банки жируют и так далее. Это все понятно. Но те люди, которые хранят деньги на счетах российских банков, вот для них это приятная новость. Устойчивость российской финансовой системы банков. Значит, теперь реальная зарплата вырастет на где-то около 8%. Это за вычетом инфляции. Я понимаю, что не у всех будет так. но в среднем по стране это статистика точная. И реальные располагаемые доходы населения тоже подрастают. Здесь больше составляющих, где-то под 5%. Уровень безработицы, о чем я упомянул. Совсем недавно мы гордились тем, что у нас исторический минимум был 3%. Вот вчера мы с коллегами готовились к сегодняшнему разговору, уже 2,9%. Такого вообще никогда не было в истории России. Это очень хороший интегрированный показатель состояния экономики. Когда я говорил про повышение реальных доходов, надо упомянуть, конечно, что с 1 января у нас будет МРОТ повышен сразу на 18%. Мы не часто это делаем. Значит, государственный внешний долг сокращается. Тоже говорит и о макроэкономической стабильности, финансовой стабильности. Госдолг сократился с 46 до 32 миллиардов долларов. И частный внешний долг также сократился. Наши компании исправно возвращают все кредиты, взятые в иностранных финансовых учреждениях, с 337 миллиардов долларов до 297. То есть погашение идет ритмично, часто даже с опережением графика. Ну и такой интегрированный социальный показатель. У нас по социальным вопросам наверняка будет много сегодня тем, но все-таки есть такой интегрированный показатель. Рост продолжительности жизни. То, о чем мы всегда говорим и к чему мы стремимся. Вот смотрите, динамика какая. 21 год. Продолжительность жизни в России 0,6. 22 год 72,73%, а вот в 2023 ожидается 74 года. Все-таки это показатель того, как в целом на важнейшем социальном показателе отражаются усилия государства и в сфере экономики, и в сфере социальной политики.
На днях мы награждали героев России, и мы затем видели, как вы говорили, ребят надо беречь, но делать. Вот уже почти 2 года наша страна живет в условиях специальной военной операции, и вопросов от граждан к нам на передачу по этому поводу, конечно, шквал. Я просто некоторые буквально зачитаю. Как вы эти 2 года оцениваете? Какова ситуация сейчас? Какова динамика? Цели и задачи операции? Они те же, что и поначалу, или уже нет? И, конечно, самое главное, когда будет мир?
Мир будет тогда, когда мы достигнем своих целей, о которых вы сказали. Теперь вернемся к этим целям. Они не меняются. Вот я напомню, о чем мы тогда говорили. О денацификации Украины, о демилитаризации, о ее нейтральном статусе. Вот смотрите, что происходит с точки зрения денацификации. Вот в ходе переговорного процесса, который имел определенный этап после подготовки проекта возможного соглашения, о чем недавно официальные лица в Киеве упоминали, в целом они не соглашались с тем, что нужна какая-то денацификация, или говорили о том, что никакой фашизации, значит, роста вот таких настроений нет. Ну, как же нет? Когда национальный герой, известный не просто националист, а нацист, Бандера, возведен в ранг национального героя. Как же нет? А когда значит, руководитель сегодняшней администрации киевской на глазах у всего мира, стоя, аплодирует бывшему солдату СС, напрямую участвовавшему в Холокосте, уничтожении 1,5 миллиона евреев на Украине, русских и поляков, стоя аплодирует. Это чего, не проявление нацизма, что ли? Поэтому вопрос денацификации, он актуальный. Правда, в ходе процесса переговорного нам, как было сказано, нашим переговорщикам, в принципе, не исключает возможности принятия каких-то законодательных актов. Но это было тогда, в ходе переговоров в Стамбуле. Теперь, что касается демилитаризации, но не хотят договариваться, ну что ж,
Unless
мы
they
тогда
want to come to
вынуждены
terms
принимать
peacefully,
другие,
we
в том числе
have
военные
to
меры.
take some
Но
action,
сегодня
including military
Украина почти
action.
ничего
But
уже не
today,
производит.
Ukraine
Ну,
virtually
пытаются что-то там
produces
еще
or manufactures
сохранить.
nothing.
Но
They
почти
have
ничего не
been trying
производят.
to maintain their
Перевозят,
manufacturing
извините за
capability,
мою
but actually
на
they have
халяву
been
все перевозят. Но эта халява
importing
когда-то может и
things
закончиться.
for free.
И, судя по всему, так и заканчивается помаленьку.
Freeloading,
Но
but
дело
it will
даже не в
come to
этом. Я
an end
думаю,
sooner or
будут еще
later.
давать. Но
Well,
уничтожение
they will keep
происходит. Я
receiving
сейчас
some
не
aid, but
буду
the extermination,
вспоминать эти цифры по
annihilation
самолетам, по
continues
системам ПВО.
with respect to
Ну вот дали им сколько там,
aircraft
сколько мы
and
обещали.
air defense systems.
400 танков, там
They received like
420,
420 or
430. Ну,
30
дали, кстати,
tanks,
все дали,
as
что
had been
обещали.
promised.
Все, что обещали западники,
Everything
все
had been
Украина получила.
delivered. I mean,
Даже
all the
больше.
things that the
Но мы
Westerners had
уничтожили,
promised
только
were
начиная с
supplied, but
так
all
называемого
that was
контрнаступления,
annihilated.
747 танков.
747
Вчерашний
tanks
вечер.
were destroyed
Значит,
as of last night
2000,
since the
почти
start
что
of the
2300
counteroffensive. Around
бронемашин различного класса. Вот это и
2,300
есть
armored personnel
демилитаризация.
vehicles of
Или мы
different
договоримся,
types.
мы это
So this is
демилитаризация. Согласуем
demilitarizing.
определенные
Either
параметры.
we
А,
come
кстати
to
говоря,
terms
в
on the
ходе переговоров в
specific
Стамбуле мы их
military
согласовали.
parameters, and we
Просто потом
did
это выбросили в печку, эти договоренности.
agree upon these
Ну,
parameters
это же
that
мы
were
согласовали.
put
Есть и
into the
другие
litter bin later.
возможности или договориться, и решить,
So
или
we have
решить силовым путем.
other opportunities either to come
Вот
to
к этому
terms
мы
or
будем стремиться.
to have our
Вопрос
way
короткий, но волнующий очень
compellingly.
многих.
Well, a
Будет ли
short
вторая
question,
волна
a brief question,
мобилизации?
where there will be a
Я
second wave of
понимаю, что он
mobilization.
такой чувствительный
I know it
вопрос.
is a
Смотрите,
sensitive matter.
у
So
нас
look,
прошла частичная
we
мобилизация,
had some
и мы
partial
призвали тогда 300
mobilization.
тысяч
We
человек.
recruited
Кстати говоря,
300,000
вот
people.
поначалу было много
And
иронии,
at the
всяких
outset,
смешков на
there has
этот
been a great
счет.
deal of, there was a great deal of irony, and
Прилепили название такое,
and
к
derision.
этому мобике.
they
Я
were
прекрасно
called
все это помню.
recce,
Отлично воюют, ребята.
recruits, but they have been
Просто
doing an
14
excellent job.
героев Российской Федерации.
Now we have 14 heroes of Russia. Out of
14
those,
героев России. Я уже не говорю про
people
другие,
recruited back
видали
then,
ордена
and a lot of
другого
other
достоинства.
decorations also
Значит,
were
ну,
awarded
сейчас,
to them.
по-моему, 244
So now around
тысячи находятся напрямую в зоне боевых действий. Ну, в зоне СВО. Сформированы полки по
Regiments have been formed
обслуживанию техники, потому что среди них много хороших специалистов.
service the military equipment, because
И
there are a lot
люди
of
очень
very good
44, 41, по-моему, тысяча
around
уволены в связи с достижением предельного возраста по здоровью и так
people
далее.
have
Вот.
been dismissed because of reached the
Вот,
age limit
после
or
этого мы
had some health problems,
начали
and
достаточно
after
широкую
that
кампанию
we started
по привлечению людей
broad
на
campaign
добровольной
to
основе к
attract
заключению контрактов с
volunteers to sign
вооруженными силами.
contracts with the armed
И да,
forces
и планировали
and,
к концу года
we planned
набрать,
to
по-моему,
recruit
412, ну, 400 тысяч с небольшим.
over 100 something
Вот на вчерашний
thousand
вечер
people. As of last
мне
night,
доложили,
I was reported, I was
набрано
informed
486 тысяч.
486,000
И
people
поток
have been recruited,
наших
and the inflow
мужчин, которые
of men
готовы защищать
that are
интересы
ready
Родины с оружием в руках,
to defend their
не
motherland
сокращается.
with arms
1500 ежедневно
dwindling.
по всей стране.
1,5
Так что
thousand every day
вместе с
up and down the country.
добровольцами, просто это условное деление,
So,
контракт
together
подписывают
with
на
the
2-3 года,
a contract is signed for 2 or 3 years
так
term
называемые добровольцы, хотя все, по сути,
by the so-called
герои
volunteers,
и
although
воины Отечества.
all these
Но у
are
них
the
просто
warriors
на
of
год,
their
на
fatherland.
более короткий срок. Но все вместе
Well,
будет
there are
под полмиллиона
yearly terms,
человек.
but it's going to be
Вот
around
до конца
500,000 of
будущего
people till the
Зачем
end of the year.
Поэтому
Why
на
do we
сегодняшний
need
день
another wave of
никакой необходимости.
mobilization? No need about
видим, что сегодня
all
Если
that.
позволите,
if
все-таки я
you
напомню, у нас
allow me,
совмещенный формат, у нас и прямая
I
линия,
remind
и
you that we have a
пресс-конференция.
blended format of a
Поэтому давайте мы
hotline
начнем
and
общение
a press
президента.
conference. So probably, if I may,
Одну секундочку,
just a
простите,
second,
пожалуйста.
У нас, видите, у нас
Well,
демократия.
actually,
Скажите,
we
тем не менее,
have
чего
a
вы...
Давайте мы
democracy here.
Нет, Дмитрий
Now,
Сергеевич,
just,
давайте.
Mr.
Пожалуйста,
Peskov,
дайте микрофон, пожалуйста.
please proceed.
Журналист
We'll
такой
give her
народ.
mic.
Здравствуйте,
The
меня
mass
зовут Людмила
media,
Кулиева,
hectic
я
people. My name
представляю
is Людмила
Северную
Кулиева. I
Осетию,
represent North Ossetia,
15-й регион. Владимир Владимирович,
region number 15.
Северная Осетия всегда
Mr. President,
защищала
North
интересы
Ossetia has
нашей
always
страны. Это Исаак
stood
Лиев,
guard of the
Хаджимар
interests
Мансуров,
of our country.
великий
Ipsat Lev
полководцы и герои Советского Союза, проявившие себя в Великой Отечественной войне. И сейчас интересы Северной Осетии, то есть интересы России, также продолжают защищать представители и жители Северной и Южной Осетии, да и всего Северного Кавказа. Что хочу сказать, вот в том числе вот много добровольцев. Вот у нас, допустим, в Северной Осетии 2 добровольческих отряда, это «Шторм Осетия» и «Алания». Сегодня для военнослужащих, которые служат по контракту, есть и разработано много льгот и разных мер поддержки. Смогут ли на них рассчитывать и добровольцы? Спасибо.
Смотрел вопросы, которые поступают, но, конечно, все даже посмотреть невозможно. Там сколько миллионов. Но вот тем не менее, Дмитрий Сергеевич мне еще где-то несколько дней назад принес вот такую кипку, я их просматривал. Таких вопросов много. Я хочу еще раз повторить свою позицию. Наверняка будут возникать еще вопросы подобного рода. Все добровольцы, все, кто с оружием в руках отстаивает интересы России, борется за нее, рискует своей жизнью и здоровьем, все должны быть поставлены, в абсолютно одинаковые условия. Есть определенные недоработки, есть, мы знаем о них. Вчера, только анализируя поступающие письма, говорил на этот счет и с министром обороны, и с начальником Генштаба, и с Татьяной Алексеевной Голиковой. Мы обсуждали, вице-премьер, возглавляющий социальный блок. Значит, там по некоторым моментам нужно будет принимать даже изменения в закон. Может, вернемся к этому. И я уверен, депутаты Государственной Думы 100% поддержат. Нужно только правильно это все сформулировать. Мы обязательно добьемся того, чтобы все были поставлены в одинаковые условия и все получали одинаковую поддержку со стороны государства. И я знаю, что и Шторм Алания, и Алания блестяще воюют, мне руководитель региона тоже об этом говорил.
То, что я отобрал, проблема с выдачей удостоверений ветеранов боевых действий. И предлагаю сейчас тогда идти нам сразу на видео-вопрос по этой тематике. Сергей Максимович Соболев из Новосибирской области, город Искитим.
Владимир Владимирович, здравствуйте. Огромная и особая честь для меня обратиться к вам с вопросом из Донбасса. Совсем недалеко сейчас от линии фронта. Войну здесь слышно хорошо. Рядом со мной бойцы штурмовой бригады Министерства обороны России, ветераны. Вашей именной бригады. Все почти уже 2 года СВО, парни на передовой. Сейчас под Донецком. Работают уверенно. Оборона врага буквально трещит и лопается по швам. Каждый новый день приносит новый хороший результат. Владимир Владимирович, победа наша уже видна. Даже противник это понимает. Но когда война закончится, предстоит обустраивать тех людей, которые воевали. Вот те же ветераны, люди с колоссальным боевым опытом, пример настоящего патриотизма. Они могли бы заниматься воспитанием подрастающего поколения, готовить смену нашей армии. Как вы считаете, может быть, есть смысл создать соответствующую военно-патриотическую структуру для нашей молодежи? Есть ли такие планы?
Во-первых, я хочу вас поблагодарить за то, что вы делаете. Это звучит несколько дежурно, но, тем не менее, поездки не от души. И МГШ, другие командиры многократно мне, знаете, что говорили? На таком-то участке создается такая обстановка. Сейчас-то ветераны. Ситуация будет абсолютно точно взята под контроль. И это просто вот эти простые слова, это оценка того, что вы делаете, можете делать, уверен, еще сделаете на поле боя. Что касается востребованности таких людей, как вы, в процессе воспитания,
to bring up and educate youths, our school children and youngsters in general, it is very, very relevant to the utmost degree.
Это очевидная абсолютная вещь, особенно на переломных моментах истории любой страны, вот как у нас сейчас. Может быть, не к месту будет Бисмарка вспоминать, но тем не менее он служил когда-то в России, жил в России, хоть и стал выдающимся немецким деятелем. Он как-то сказал, что войны выигрывают не полководцы, а школьные учителя и священники. Вот это правильно, это точно, абсолютно. Вот это воспитание молодых людей в духе патриотизма в самом хорошем, а не квасном смысле этого слова, оно чрезвычайно важно. И мы уже начинаем это делать. Уже свыше 1000 ваших коллег и ваших товарищей по оружию, которые отслужили, вернулись к мирной жизни. Свыше 1000 работают в школах и с детскими подростковыми коллективами. И мы обязательно будем это делать дальше. Будем точно совершенно расширять эту работу. Потому что одно дело прочитать в книжке или даже кино посмотреть патриотического характера, а другое дело передать что-то на личном примере. Самое лучшее воспитание – это личный пример. Но кто может сделать это лучше, чем вы?
Но у нас живой эфир, живая ткань, видим сразу, что все вот так вот на живую нитку. Пожалуйста, Дмитрий Сергеевич.
Спасибо, Павел.
А вот, извините, Дима, извини, пожалуйста, убивают Волгу. Что такое?
Сейчас будем все время в таком вот...
Здравствуйте, Владимир Владимирович. Меня зовут Елена Усманова, деловая газета Татарстана «Бизнес онлайн». В этом году жители регионов Поволжья столкнулись с катастрофическим обмелением Куйбышевского водохранилища. Все лето воду спускали в низовье Волги, аргументируя это тем, что страдают интересы рыболовной отрасли Астрахани. Как вам кажется, нужно решать проблему с обмелением Волги? И не кажется ли вам, что с таким отношением мы можем потерять главную русскую реку? Спасибо.
Я надеюсь, что этого не произойдет. Есть конфликт интересов между энергетиками и другими водопользователями в низовье. Энергетики хотят держать высокий уровень для того, чтобы объем электроэнергии с Волжского каскада, с электростанции был достаточным для того, чтобы обеспечить интересы промышленности и комбыта. А другие водопользователи в низовье, они хотят, чтобы река была полноводной. Моряки, конечно, судовладельцы хотят, чтобы фарватер был обеспечен и чтобы он был поглубже. Эти вопросы известны, и поверьте, что правительство работает над этим и не бросит это на самотек в прямом и в переносном смысле этого слова. Но проблема, конечно, есть, согласен.
Коллеги действительно очень активные.
Вопросов много, чтобы нам все-таки паритет соблюдать.
Дмитрий Сергеевич, вернем.
Давайте, я вижу и Тартас, средний сектор, пожалуйста, первый ряд. Кремлевский пол, собственно говоря. Пожалуйста.
Владимир Владимирович, здравствуйте. Информационное агентство ТАСС, Екатерина Крастовцева. И у нас вопрос на международную тему и вопрос трехсоставный. Каковы, на ваш взгляд, перспективы нормализации отношений с Евросоюзом? В последнее время становится все более очевидным, что западные страны устали от поддержки Украины. Как вы оцениваете этот новый фактор? И еще такой вопрос. Правые силы на данный момент усиливают свои позиции на политической сцене Европы. Вот как бы вы могли это прокомментировать и не беспокоит ли вас это? Спасибо.
Что касается нормализации отношений, это зависит не только от нас. Мы не портили жизнь отношений. Это с нами портили отношения, и нас пытались все время задвинуть куда-то на второй, третий план, пренебрегая нашими интересами. Вот конфликт, который произошел на Украине, с чего начался? Давайте вспомним, но не пожалеем 3-4 минут. Начался с переворота на Украине в 2014 году. Вот до этого ведь мы старались во что бы то ни стало, я хочу это подчеркнуть, десятилетиями старались выстроить нормальные отношения с Украиной. Даже после тоже, по сути, госпереворота, когда Виктор Янукович не допустили к власти, он выиграл выборы, но объявили третий тур. Чуть это как не госпереворот. В Конституции не предусмотрено было никакого третьего тура. Это есть такой ползучий госпереворот. Но мы, ладно, отнесли, мы смирились с этим тоже. Значит, что произошло дальше? Он выиграл все-таки выборы следующие. На что пошли наши так называемые оппоненты на госпереворот. Вы понимаете, в чем проблема? Проблема в том, что, я всегда говорил, и сейчас, несмотря на всю трагедию происходящих событий, все-таки в основе своей русские, украинцы, единый народ. И то, что сейчас происходит, это огромная трагедия, похожая на гражданскую войну между братьями, когда братья оказались по разную сторону. Но в значительной степени они-то даже здесь, даже ни при чем. Вот весь юго-восток Украины, он всегда был пророссийским. Ну, потому что это исторически российские территории. Частично, вот здесь вот коллега поднимает табличку Турция, да? Ну, он знает, Турция хорошо знает. Все при Черноморье в результате русско-турецких войн отошло к России. В чем здесь Украина? Никакого отношения не имеет вообще. Ни Крым, ни вообще все при Черноморье. Одесса вообще русский город. Мы же знаем об этом. Все об этом хорошо знают. Нет, мы придумали всякую чушь историческую. Ладно, когда-то Владимир Ильич Ленин передал все в Украину при формировании Советского Союза. Мы смирились с этим после распада Советского Союза. Мы же смирились и готовы были в такой парадигме жить. Но вот эта часть Юго-Востока, пророссийская, для нас это было тоже важно. Они всегда на выборах голосовали за тех, кто и шел на пророссийских лозунгах внутренней политики и внешней Украины. И в целом Россию это вполне устраивало. Но после госпереворота 2014 года нам стало ясно, что нам не дадут просто, силовым образом не дадут выстроить нормальные отношения с Украиной. Госпереворот, на который потратили, как американцы сказали, 5 миллиардов. Публично сказали, не постеснялись. Значит, в 2014 году приехали 3 министра иностранных дел вот из Европы. Польский, немецкий, французский. Подписались как гаранты договоренности между властью, президентом Януковичем, и оппозицией. Договорились, что все будут решать мирным путем. Через 2 дня совершили госпереворот. Зачем? Пошли бы на выборы и выиграли? Нет. Чтобы точку поставить, чтобы конфликт создать. Вот зачем. Это кто делал? Американские наши дружки. Европейцы, которые подписались как гаранты договоренности между властью и оппозицией, сделали вид, что вообще ничего не знают. И сейчас спросите в Европе, кто-нибудь помнит об этом? Нет. Но мы не забыли. И не забудем. Вот это, плюс безудержное стремление подползти к нашим границам, захватив и Украину в НАТО, все это привело к этой трагедии. Плюс еще кровавые события на Донбассе в течение 8 лет. Все это привело к трагедии, которую мы сейчас переживаем. Они вынудили нас на эти действия. Вот в этих условиях, когда я говорю, США задумали и организовали, а Европа стоит и молча на это смотрит. Либо подыгрывают, подпевают. Значит, ну как с ними выстраивать отношения? Мы за. Мы же ничего не рвали. Но они сделали вид, что они этого ничего не знают и не помнят. Только 2-3 раза упомянули о том, что Минские соглашения подписывали понарошку и не собирались выполнять. Вот эти гарантии договоренности между властью и оппозицией в Украине в 2014 году вроде как между прочим, подписали, и тут же они забыли и наплевали на них. Вот они, понимаете, дело в чем? Дело в том, что в значительной степени они утратили свой суверенитет. Мы сейчас это и видим. Они же многие решения принимают себе во вред. Во вред себе. Но, тем не менее, делают это. Значит, вот многие еврейские деятели внешне ведут себя как генерал де Голь, который боролся за интересы Франции с оружием в руках, собрал все, что было у французов для того, чтобы показать сопротивление оккупантов. А на практике ведут себя как маршал Петен, который был на самом деле, хоть и был героем Первой мировой войны, но во Вторую стал коллаборационистом и подчинился воле оккупантов. Вот ведут, все почти ведут себя так. Ну, кроме там нескольких человек. Вот появился сейчас после выборов. Сейчас, ну, Виктор Орбан в Венгрии. Я уже много раз говорил, они не пророссийские политики, они пронациональные, они защищают свои интересы. Но таких нет больше. Их просто нет. Но я не знаю, с чем это связано. Связано с большой зависимостью от старшего брата. Но мы готовы выстраивать отношения с ними. Что касается насчет Соединенных Штатов, мы и с ними готовы выстраивать отношения. Мы считаем, что США важно, нужно, астрономия. Но вот это имперская, абсолютно имперская политика, она им мешает самим. Даже не нам, им мешает. Почему? Потому что в общественном сознании они должны себя вести как империя. И если они в чем-то где-то договариваются или в чем-то кому-то уступают, это уже воспринимается электоратом как какой-то провал или пробел. И поэтому элиты вынуждены себя так отчасти вести. Значит, вот когда произойдут какие-то внутренние изменения, тогда будут созданы фундаментальные, когда они начнут уважать других людей, другие страны, когда будут искать компромиссы, а не с помощью санкций и боевых действий пытаться решать свой вопрос. Вот тогда будут созданы фундаментальные условия для восстановления полноценных отношений. Пока таких условий нет, но мы к этому готовы.
Владимир Ильич, я чуть-чуть еще все-таки, у нас не все военкоры сейчас на передовой, у нас здесь, я вижу, в студии, вот тот сектор, пожалуйста, это Николай Долгачев. Задайте свой вопрос.
Владимир Владимирович, здравствуйте. Это Николай Долгачев, корреспондент Вести, директор филиала ГТРК в Луганске. Да, Луганская республика практически полностью освобождена, и мирная жизнь восстанавливается, но мы за весь фронт переживаем и знаем, какие активные бои ведутся на юге и вдоль Днепра. Даже уже некоторое время говорят о некоем плацдарме противника на левом берегу Днепра, в районе населенного пункта Крынки. Что вообще это за плацдарм, как там идет у нас обстановка? И, если позволите, дополнить, дело в том, что на тех освобожденных районах, которые уже немножко дальше от фронта, действительно идет очень масштабная работа по восстановлению и социальных объектов, инфраструктуры. Мы видим это своими глазами, как сильно меняется жизнь. Но многие спрашивают, и я спрошу, какое будущее у всех новых регионов нашей страны, какая цель через несколько лет, какими мы их увидим в стране. И мы знаем, Владимир Владимирович, что, как вы скажете, так и будет. Поэтому скажите, пожалуйста, как будет.
Хотелось бы, чтобы, как я сказал, так и будет. Не всегда так бывает, к сожалению. Но это мировая практика. Да, я думаю, что вот, у каждого сидящего здесь, и да и у каждого у нас слушает, смотрит, что-то говорим, что-то хотим, что-то получается, что-то не получается. Это нормально. Но стремиться к достижению своих целей, безусловно, нужно. Теперь по поводу этих рынок. Ну что там происходит? Вот, противник анонсировал контрнаступление большое, нигде ничего не получилось.
failed everywhere.
Последняя попытка,
The recent attempt,
во всяком случае, на сегодняшний день
at
выглядит
least
как
as of
последняя
today,
попытка,
it looked like the last
была
attempt, in fact.
прорваться на
They were
левый
trying
берег
to
Днепра и
break through in
обеспечить
the
себе
left
движение
bank
в
of
направлении
Dnieper
Крыма.
River and
Ну,
move
это
towards Crimea.
все говорят об этом, все хорошо
Everyone was
знают,
talking about that.
и ничего здесь
Everyone
нового
knew
нет.
that.
Что произошло
This is no
вот
news.
на этом участке?
See what happened in that part of the
Значит,
front line.
ВСУ сосредоточила
The Ukrainian armed forces
удар
have
артиллерии
concentrated
по
their
очень
artillery
узкому
strikes
участку
in a very
берега
narrow part
левого,
of the
ну, для того, чтобы
left bank,
сохранить ребят
to make sure
наших и
we
не
can
подвергать
save
их
our guys and not to
излишнему риску,
endanger them,
нести потери,
not
было
to take
принято
too much
решение
losses.
военным
We
командованием
decided, the military
отойти
command decided
на несколько
to
метров.
withdraw a few meters.
Ну, я вам скажу, вы военный корреспондент, понимаете, о чем я говорю, в лесопосадке, чтобы они, они скрывают личный состав и уберегают от ненужных потерь. Значит, ВСУ зашло на этот участок, он небольшой, 1200 примерно в длину был, и где-то 300 метров в ширину. Ну и вот, я даже не знаю, зачем они это делают. Они пихают своих людей на просто истребление. Сами военнослужащие говорят, украинские военнослужащие говорят, что это дорога в один конец. Ведь для того, чтобы туда подать личный состав, там человек 80 все время находилось. Сейчас поменьше уже. Используют только лодки, но они же под огнем артиллерии, дронов, других средств поражения. Вот у наших военнослужащих там потери санитарные. 2-3. 3 дня назад было 6 человек раненых. У противника десятки погибших. Просто они попали в огневой мешок, и по политическим, я считаю, только по политическим соображениям бросают туда личный состав. С чем это связано? Ну, можно только представить себе, догадываться. Связано, видимо, с поездками руководства Украины за границу с целью выключить дополнительные деньги на содержание страны, на военную составляющую, на технику, на боеприпасы. Подход
the military there only because of the political reasons. We can only imagine why is this happening. We can only imagine that this is related to the visits to foreign countries to get financing for the country, for the military, for the equipment. This is their approach. They are going to other countries asking for money. And now they have to show that the Ukrainian army has some chances to reach at least something without thinking about any losses in the context of the so-called counteroffensive. And people are and the military is getting pushed out of there. They could do something, but they understand that they will be destroyed. That is what is happening. And I would like to point out, these are not just the military of the Ukrainian armed forces. This is elite. These are storm troops. There are not many of them. Let's take like 1 month and a half. We see the losses of the Ukrainian armed forces, and we understand that this is very sensitive for them. I think that this is foolish and irresponsible for the political leadership of the country, but it's their decision. It was said, just try not to push them too early from there. It's very useful for us to send people there. It's very useful for us. This is the logic of the armed fight, and they're continuing to do that. This is a tragedy for them, I think. But, well, the minister said that the territory will be narrowed, and this is happening. And I think that the situation will end. Well, if we're speaking about the situation in the front, you all know it very well. You are experts. And sometimes I look at you and I really afraid, and I see girls on the front line running over there. Well, I should ask to keep women out of there because I'm really afraid to look at that. But what can I say about the situation? Along the line, the front line, our armed forces are improving their situation. They are working actively. I'm speaking about all the front line, and the situation is improving. As for the future of the regions, there are many issues. There are many questions about this from the new regions and from other parts of the Russian Federation. What will happen? How will they develop? Every year, the federal budget has more than 1 trillion rubles for that, for the development of these regions, to introduce them progressively into the social and economic life of the Russian Federation. In other regions, the situation is much better. For instance, like in Crimea, Kiev authorities were not paying a lot of attention to them. But every year we provided 1 trillion rubles. And this is what we'll go into invest in the future. We also have fraternal relations between these regions and other regions of the Russian Federation. Around 150 billion rubles were provided by the regions. Other regions will also provide around 100 billion rubles. But what I would like to say is, this year, these new regions paid to the federal budget 170 billion rubles. What does it say? It means that the economy of these regions is restoring, and now it is in normal state. Yes, a lot has to be done, and we will do it. We are working live, and there are some technical issues. Earlier we saw a video question from Sergei Zenin. Well, I would like to speak to a colleague from Turkey. Let's listen to the question. And then we'll turn to the military correspondent. And there are also girls around the military correspondent. Nadulo Agency. Mr. President, the results of the attacks of the Israel in the Gaza Strip. Every 6-7 minutes, one child is dying. 8,000 Palestinian children have died, and 6,000 women. Unfortunately, the UN and the biggest countries of the world cannot stop these attacks. What do you think? Has the UN lost its function? And because of this situation, is still Palestine Palestine still existing? And is Turkey and Russia doing anything to preserve the peace, to establish the peace in the region? And what Moscow and Ankara are planning in the sphere of regional questions? Are you planning to visit Turkey in the nearest future? Thank you. Well, first of all, I see what is happening in the Gaza Strip. That is just my evaluations. I agree with what has been said. I would like to say that President Erdogan plays a leading role in this, in restoring the situation in Gaza Strip. He is one of the leaders of the international community who pay attention to this tragedy and do everything to change the situation for the better, to create conditions for long-term peace. And this is obvious. And he's very active on this track. And I wish him all the best. Everything that is happening is a catastrophe. There is also a situation related to the Ukrainian crisis. But you and everyone here, everyone in the world, let's see what is happening in the special military operation and in Gaza Strip, and everyone can see the difference. Nothing like that is happening in Ukraine, if we compare it to Gaza Strip. There are thousands of women and children. The Secretary General of the UN said that today Gaza Strip is the biggest cemetery of children in the world. And this evaluation means a lot. This is an objective evaluation. As for the role of the UN, there is nothing unusual in this. I have been speaking about this during Cold War. Different states were blocking some decisions that were promoted by other states. But initially, the UN was created to find consensus. If it is not found, then the decisions cannot be made. Nothing unusual is happening in the life of the UN. It was always like that, especially for taking Cold War. The Mr. Gromyko, foreign minister, he was called Mr. No because Soviet Union was always using his veto right. Well, if if the countries think that some actions are hostile, and then they will not be taken. And this is important to have such mechanisms, because then the UN will only be used as a platform to talk. After the First World War, for instance, this happened. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to find consensus. Like Turkey, we think that we should implement the UN decisions about the creation of the Palestine state with the capital in the eastern Jerusalem. We need to create fundamental basis for the Israeli-Palestine settlement. As for the plans, we stay in constant contact with the President Erdogan, and we have very similar positions. I think that we'll meet with him. I plan to do that. I was planning to do that. It's not a secret. President Erdogan didn't have time because of his schedule. Well, I'm ready to go to Turkey, and I informed him about that. But, well, he couldn't do this because of his schedule. It was not my fault. Maybe in the beginning of the next year, we'll have a visit. As for our efforts, you know that in 2 Arab countries we have consultations in Saudi Arabia, in United Arab Emirates. First of all, we need to preserve people. We need to protect people in Gaza Strip. We are always in contact on that. We need to provide massive humanitarian support to people. When we were in the United Arab Emirates, I was there. We knew that Emirates created in Gaza Strip, not in Gaza Strip, but near it, near the border, they created a hospital there, a field hospital. So maybe it's possible that Russia could open its own field hospital there at the stadium. For that, we need the permission of Egypt and Israel. I have spoken to President of Egypt. He's in favor of that, supports this idea. I have spoken to the Prime Minister Netanyahu. We had consultations on that with special forces, and Israel thinks that Russian hospital will be in danger in Gaza Strip. But it doesn't mean that we will stop these efforts. Maybe today it's dangerous and Israel will not support it. However, we have some agreements with Israel, and they asked us about that. They asked us to provide more medical equipment and medicine. We will do that without any doubt. With all the countries, we stay in contact and we will continue to work actively with them. Let's speak about girls, women that work on the front line. Now we'll speak to Valentina Solovyova. She's now working in the region of Zaporizhzhia.
Hello. Right now we're at Melitopol cancer ward. This is a regional ward. You can see how many people are stationed in each room, 3 and 6 beds placed here. The head doctor, Konstantin Lakunin. Dr. Lakunin, we see that you have a lot of patients. So what's the situation with doctors? We have a lot of patients, and naturally, just like in the rest of Russia, we don't have enough doctors, but maybe we have a more dramatic situation. We need oncologists, hematologists, peds oncologists. Well, they're simply not present here. So we have, as a cancer ward, to take over the functions, thanks to federal research centers that are helping us with clinical and methodological support. They're taking our patients for treatment. How many patients per doctor as of now? As an outpatient care, 50 or 60 people per day, and 30 as supposed to be as a standard. So the burden of the patient burden is at double. The same applies for inpatient care, 20 people per doctor. That is also twice as high as a standard. Still, you're developing, you have some medicines in common. Yes, we're doing a large-scale renovation for surgical ward, and we're doing everything according to federal program standards. This is a surgical table for new surgical rooms. So we believe that we'll start working with great success, with new success. So the matter of staffing is very important, is very acute. You wanted to ask it? Yes, it's a question and also a proposal. Maybe we could create a special federal program to bringing staff to new regions into healthcare and social sphere of the new regions. Possibly this could be residential construction as well as land plans, possibly mortgages with certain benefits and concessions, but we need to attract people here. Is the salary competitive? Yes, it's very competitive, and
Ну что ж, в этом году уже на этапе сбора вопросов включился общероссийский народный фронт. Нет никаких сомнений, что все обращения будут обработаны, они не останутся без ответа. На это у активистов ОНФ есть целый год. Ну а самые яркие, интересные и актуальные вопросы прозвучат сегодня в нашем эфире.
Вчера утром написала на сайт Москва Путину вопрос, что не платят зарплату, а уже вечером она пришла. Многие проблемы, в общем, решались.
Is that these benefits can be applied only to newly erected buildings, and it seems there are not quite a lot of those new buildings. So just like in the Far East, I think we need to expand it to secondary housing. And we need to work really fast and to start doing that work right away. That's number one. And number two, As for creating additional encouragement, well, if the doctor has said that the salary is competitive, then what else is needed? Shumbrad, that means hello in Moldovan. Yes, I'll respond to your question. So what needs to be done? Possibly, just like in the Far East, maybe we need to get a higher relocation grant for regional doctors up to 2 million rubles and for paramedics up to 1 million rubles. I think that will be a good stimulus. We have already adopted the federal budget, but maybe we can do that in the nearest future. Thank you. We see that colleagues cannot wait for the end of your response. Well, you said that, yeah, I promised. I think you're from Moldova, right? Yes. Please give the floor to the lady in red. Mr. Putin, my name is Anastasia Miltaeva. I'm from Moldova and I represent our multinational republic. I would like to invite you to our pavilion at the exhibition called Russia. Thank you, first and foremost, for this idea. What was the feedback? We took stock, and it seems that 97% of Russians are taking pride in their country after visiting the exhibition. Naturally, the regions have a lot to be proud of. Moldova is doing innovative manufacturing, optic cable, pharmaceuticals, and naturally the calling card of Moldova, black diamond of our region, is a specially treated oak tree. Well, it's a possibility to take a look at the beauty of our region, and well, this is an opportunity to solve matters with the business community and to solve other matters as well. I'd like to invite you there, and I would like to be present there as well. In the run-up to a new year, every girl dreams of a miracle, and even a big girl, so I'll be happy to be there. Yes, thank you very much for your invitation. Indeed, Moldova is a very beautiful republic. What I like is that the way the people treat their traditions, their culture in all of its manifestations, to the traditional dress and traditions in the widest sense of the word. As for the regions and the exhibitions and the regional part of that, indeed, that is a great success. The regional exhibitions at the VDNK are one of the most interesting for visitors and viewers. Yes, indeed, I'll try to get there. Thank you very much. So before we go back to questions from citizens, let's go back to the media questions. I'd like to give the floor to Match TV. Something about sports. Well, if we can judge by the TV channel. Maria Korobova, Match TV channel. Naturally, it's about sports. We have a lot to discuss. IOC, a week ago, has stated very harsh conditions on giving the chance for Russians to take part. However, the same does not apply to the Israelis. Do we need to go to the Olympic Games in this situation? And what is the general situation with the sports of high achievements? I would also like to ask a question due to difficult conditions, difficult times right now, whether we'll continue that tradition of PE and sports development, especially in the regions. Before you can answer, you are into sports yourself, and you call judo your first love. That is truly so. We have a tremendous amount of calls from parents, from trainers, from the children themselves that they have a lot of willpower to take part in the competitions. However, there is no place to train. Well, not enough facilities for that. Let's listen to the call from Crimea. Mr. Putin, we're talking to you from the sunny state, where we have been to many competitions, to regional competitions. We have always won cups and medals. We have always trained in this facility, but this year it's impossible to hold competitions here. The walls are covered in fungus, so the roof is leaking, so it's impossible to train here. And our trainers have applied everywhere. However, it was impossible to receive a solution. So therefore, we're training outside. Please, if you could renovate our sports facility. We'd like to be healthy and to be a pride of our city and region. Okay, I'd respond to the children, naturally. As for the IOC decision in comparison with other athletes coming from Israel and so on, well, the first thing is that everything that international civil servants are doing in terms of Russia completely contradicts the ideas and spirit of Pierre de Coubertin, that sports is the world, and that was created in order to unite people and not on the contrary. The current international functionaries are too engaged in the business, in the commercial side of the sports, and now they have fallen into dependence from sponsors that pay attention to the cost of 1 minute of commercials on TV and so on and so forth. There are plenty of internal issues as well. If they continue to act in the same way in the future, they will simply bury the idea of the Olympic movement and the spirit of Olympic movement. You've mentioned Israel and Israeli athletes. Despite what's happening in Gaza, well, if I supported this notion right now, I'll be the same as these sports functionaries. Well, sports should be beyond politics, and it should unite people. Well, as we say that you should not count other people's money, so I think it will be unjustified to lay blame at someone else's feet. Yes, indeed, there are issues as well, as we spoke with your colleague just now. What does it have to do with the athletes? Let them travel and train and compete and so on. The same should be done towards Russian athletes. However, that does not happen. Under the influence from the Western elites, they're making decisions that are beneficial to them and not beneficial to the global sports, just like European politicians are making decisions that are detrimental to themselves and beneficial to the U.S. The same applies here, whether we should go to the Olympic Games or not. Well, you know, we need to really consider what are these conditions, the flag, the national anthem, and so on. I've always been saying that the athletes are training for many years, and we should give them the chance to compete at the major events, including the Olympic Games. Everyone knows that, regardless of the flag, that this is our athlete. It's apparent. That is why I supported our athletes traveling out and competing. But I think we need to analyze what are the conditions placed by the IOC. If these conditions are politically motivated and aimed at trying to prevent our leading athletes from participating, those who could be at the top with gold, silver, or bronze medals, trying to hamstring our national team. Well, for example, if athletes from the Army Club or from Dynamo cannot compete as they're allegedly connected to the armed forces, though today the CSKA, the Army Club, has nothing to do with the army. Now it's a private club. Well, if the idea is trying to get rid of our leaders and try to show that Russian sports are not developing, on the contrary, is withering, well, that means that the Ministry of Sports and the National Olympic Committee of Russia should analyze and to make a well-balanced decision. Yes, Mr. Peskov. Well, you promised a response to our children from Crimea. Naturally, I've noted it down. I would like to address the children and say, indeed, we need to develop sports and all of our programs dedicated to that as well. Indeed, last year, I think 1.5 billion or 1.7 billion was earmarked from the federal budget dedicated to regional sports. This year, we're not even reaching 700 million. We need to get back to that topic, and I think this should be a part of the presidential program. I think it needs to be done. As for the specific matter in Crimea, I will speak to the sports ministry and so on. And as for the federal level, we'll give a targeted solution to this matter. Yes, there are a lot of such applications from two-man hockey and other types of sports. So, Mr. Peskov, giving you back the microphone. The National People's Republic will be looking at these applications throughout the year, as we have said. I see Dmitry Kulko, yet another military correspondent. I'm very strange to see him in a suit with a tie, so if you could please give him the mic.
Dmitry Kulkov, First Channel, military correspondent. Mr. President, hello, hello. Several questions from the servicemen that are now in the war zone. Do you think that the system of payments to the servicemen is working fine, and can it be improved? I know people that haven't received salaries for months. The second question is about the wounded servicemen and the Foundation Defenders of Fatherland that was established to support the families of the diseased personnel, and how do you assess the operation of that foundation? And a proposal, a suggestion to make, Mr. President, if I'm allowed. Today, servicemen that were wounded after hospitalization have to come back to their squad deployment zone. So they have to come back to the military zone, and they may have been wounded gravely, losing limbs, and probably it would be better for them to go through this commission, medical commission, in hospitals where they are treated. And the last question is about drones, aerial vehicles. We have a shortage of them, an acute shortage, and the combatants ask to provide more of that, but it's insufficient still. Their numbers are insufficient. And not long ago, we collected money together with the People's National Front for the 4th Brigade that is fighting around Klishayevka. A month has passed, and these drones are consumables, and, you know, half of them is gone despite the jamming and the rain. We need more of that, and our servicemen need more drones, because we need to improve the situation, to provide reconnaissance and surveillance. You probably are observing that things are improving. Tell me I'm right. It has been improving, yes, but, you know, we need more. Well, it's been improving, which is for sure, but you are correct in saying that we do not have the sufficient quantities always, and it's hit and miss. Please sit down. And the front line is around 2,000 kilometers long. Around 2,000 kilometers long. And definitely, obviously, for sure, not all the supplies arrive on time everywhere, but we are ramping up our own domestic manufacturing, and we have been importing lots of things privately from the abroad by the Defense Ministry. Well, and the Defense Ministry, the industry have been working hard to improve the situation with respect to counter electronic fight systems and anti-jamming systems. We have been installing a new system called Lesochek on all the vehicles. We'll keep bolstering these efforts, and as regards the bottom-up movement and the People's Front, participation, engagement. This is a very good thing, and the government and the state could do without this support. But we cannot stop that. We don't have a right to stop that. And I'd like to thank all our people for their heartfelt attitude and caring attitude, taking into account the needs of the people and the servicemen fighting there. Around 10 billion rubles of donations. Definitely now our economy is on the rise and we have the funds, but the fact that they knit garments and they send money and send letters. Around 3 million letters from children were delivered to the front line, and we will be supporting that. I'd like to express my gratitude to all the volunteers engaged. Sometimes we have some disruptions in supplies. We have regular meetings with the military correspondents, and you have been keeping a close eye at what is happening there, and I hope we will keep in touch with you, and you will submit all the data to me and the Defense Ministry. With respect to the need for the wounded servicemen to come back to the stationing site to perform all formalities, I saw these questions in the letters, and probably the situation has changed. Either you have the obsolete data, or I have imprecise data. As the Defense Ministry has said, now everything is possible. All the formalities may be performed in hospitals or rehabilitation facilities that are not on the front line. Definitely, I will double-check whether the efforts of providing accommodation and benefits are well established, or whether they have to come back to their stationing site or not. I'll talk to the Defense Minister after the press conf. It must be rectified if it's flawed. With respect to the Fatherland Defendants Foundation, it works very well. Very good people. A brilliant team, and I met one of their leaders, and wonderful people, a great team, very upbeat, but their scope is limited, as per their statutory documents. They cannot take direct participation or be directly engaged. And I always was against them channeling and managing funds, but I am in favor at the same time to enhance their rights with respect to the control of what amount is channeled where and what the outcomes may be, inter alia, also in the sphere of rehabilitation. And I will not delve into details now, but I know that the members of parliament, after visiting one of the outlets of this foundation, reported to me, and we will improve the operation of that foundation so that it is a good tool to uphold the interests of all the servicemen participating in the hostilities. You mentioned the huge and crucial role of the volunteers and the kind heart of them. Lots of questions received from them. Madam Marina from the Moscow region asks as follows today. We see a lot of help from the grassroots to the military in procurement and supplies. Why do rank and file people do that, not the government? I have just answered. The government has been tackling that. 99.99% of all the efforts is the share of the government, but still the bottom-up movement is heartfelt and will not limit that. Well, the counter-jamming systems, well, an assault fighter asks to provide more jamming devices, and we may be lacking them in these systems in some parts of the front line, in some segments of the front line, because it's more than 2,000 kilometers long and 617,000 strong contingent is stationed there. So we might have disruptions in certain segments, definitely, but if you have specific cases, please provide the data. And myself and the military correspondents will watch that. Sergei Sobolev from Novosibirsk once again phoning in. Mr. President, Sergei Sobolev, on the 13th of November 2022, I concluded a contract with a private military group for 6 months. When I returned home, I came to the Defense Committee to receive the certificate of a veteran, and I turned to the foundation of Fatherland's defenders to receive the certificate, and I was declined, and in other instances I also was declined. And please, will you sort that out, because we all, myself and my comrades, served in this private military company, and we cannot receive the veteran certificates. You know, I know about this system. These are the loopholes, the gaps that should have been rectified by the Defense Ministry. Well, formally and legally, we do not have private military companies as per our law. This is number one. Number two, the contracts of the hostilities participants were not signed with the state, but with the private companies. So commanders of those private military companies were related, were in contact with the government, and the payments were in cash. This is also a problem, and now it is very hard to pin down the exact lists of those private military groups. But I know all these people. I personally have some instances, like some of the children of my acquaintances participated in the warfare from representing these private military companies. And among my milieu, there are people whose children have participated, and some of them lost their lives, sacrificing that for the motherland, being members of the private military groups, and without a doubt, their rights must be reinstated. They are eligible to receive all the social benefits, allowances, and all other forms of support granted to other participants of the hostilities. This is my categoric stance. I will not go into detail, but this must be done, and the Defense Ministry knows that, as well as the government. If need be, or probably necessarily, we would have to amend the legislation, and this will be done, and I promise we will do our best and go to great lengths. Now let's call. I can see some running line. One of them has been saying, Yelpatyevo, Yaroslav region, please provide gas supplies. We'll have a look at that. Probably we'll come back to that later, and we may speak about the gasification and Yelpatyevo settlement in the Yaroslav region. And now we'll have a video call out to the village of Beriozovo. Can you hear us? Good afternoon. I'm a service person now situated in Lugansk. Junior Sergeant Yulia Berezova. I always wanted to end up in Donbass as a volunteer. On the 10th of May of 2022, I subscribed the Voluntary Mobilization Act, and I was ascribed to a regiment for the sake of defending our homeland and for the sake of justice. But I was mobilized in the Donetsk People's Republics, not Russia. But, you know, I wanted to have all the benefits on site of my domicile, and I have a certificate of a participant of hostilities in Donetsk Republic, and it's valid only in that republic. And in the federal database, my serial number, my personal number, is inexistent. So we are not represented. We are invisible for this nationwide system. Thank you for your question. You were recruited by the People's Militia of Donetsk People's Republic that are on the front line, on the contact line, participating in the hostilities. And indeed, the point is, the issue is that those who signed contracts when Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics were not part of the Russian Federation are now in trouble. And the issue is quite relevant. Well, the junior sergeant is a Russian national, I know, and it's especially relevant for those who were not citizens of Russia. Now, the papers that you have make you eligible for benefits in Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. These papers may be rendered valid on Russian soil. There is a procedure for that. Or you may receive a brand new package of documents on behalf of the Russian Federation. Now, a commission has been established in Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics. They already operate.
And I believe that there have been about 4,500 people who have confirmed their rights. In the Lugansk People's Republic, there was 17,500 people who also confirmed their rights. And in Donetsk, they have already issued the relevant certificates and IDs. A few thousand of them, in fact. And the same goes for the Lugansk People's Republic. 1,700 IDs have been issued. So we have already started moving along this path, and we will keep working to restore the rights and confirm the rights of the war veterans. There should be no doubt about that. If something's not done yet, rest assured we will do that, and we will finish it. And if there are any difficulties that you're experiencing when addressing the Commission, you can just tell us, and we will fix it. Let's get back to the journalists, if I may. There's a young man next. Wait, let's move to the north. There's a question there. Mr. President, good afternoon. Republic Komi, Darishchanina, the capital Panorama, and member of the civil chamber of our region. This is a question that the people of the Northern Territories entitled me to ask. You know that, unfortunately, all over the country, not only in our region, it takes quite a long time to implement a very important part of the program of the relocation of the people of the far north. We have 6 localities like that in the Republic of Komi. These are the people who have given their lives for the economic development of the north, and now they wish they could spend their retirement in the territories with a more moderate climate. A few figures. This year, our republic received 129 housing certificates from the state, but there are 21,000 people still in line for the certificates. I'm not asking you to give certificates to all the people, but I see 2 options here. The first option is prioritize two categories of people, the disabled people and the retired people. These are the two categories who should be the priority. There are two options for them. Even though the federal budget is quite pressed for money, but still I would ask you to seek additional finance for next year. If that's too complicated, our region is ready to get a low-interest loan, and our authorities are ready to relocate the people of Irtim and Vorkuta, the people who live in these regions, to relocate them within the region, for example, to Syktyvkar or to the south of Komi, where the climate is also quite acceptable. Would it be possible to choose one of the two options, or perhaps there are any third options? And thank you once again for solving our question of giving the Vorkuta airport to the federal property status. Thank you for that. Yes, and it's important that the airport is developing. Sometimes we give it to the region, and then the region starts asking for federal money for development. Well, the Republican authorities are very active, and the governor was asking you about that, and all the decisions have been taken. Yes, I know that the governor is very active, and he has good connections. He used to work in the federal authorities, and I believe he is quite efficient in that. I would ask you to repeat your proposal. So, you're suggesting that we prioritize two categories of people, the disabled people and the retired people. And so we see two options for them. The first, the easiest option, is seeking additional financing from the federal budget. The second option that we would be capable of is relocating these people within our region of Komi, but that would need a low-interest loan from the federal budget to make sure we can solve their housing issues, either in Syktyvkar or in the south of Komi. The republic is big, and moving from the north to the south of the republic would also be a solution. You know, if we had a finance minister here, he would answer that we have no money, and the Minister of Finance never has any money for that. But still, we should seek a solution and seek the expansion of the program. I know that there are people who've been working their entire life in the north, or at least some period of their life, and now they would like to move somewhere south or to a region with a more moderate climate. Of course, we will continue this program, most importantly. And secondly, speaking of
кредиты тоже непростая вещь, но это, возможно, более мягкая форма содействия региону и не настолько обременительная для Минфина. Хотя это тоже определенное обременение есть, это очевидно. Но надо подумать и попробовать реализовать. Ну, а что касается того, чтобы сосредоточить внимание на льготных категориях, тоже правильно. Это вот, обязательно это обсудим с правительством. Спасибо вам за предложение.
Владимирович, если можно, все-таки продолжим вот здесь. Давайте вот этот ряд, третий, по-моему, третий ряд, вот молодой человек тянет руку. Представьтесь, пожалуйста.
Владимир Сероухов, РБК. Если позволите, два вопроса про валюту. На днях новым президентом Аргентины стал Хавьер Милей, и одно из главных его предвыборных обещаний – это ввод в стране вместо песо американского доллара. От России, наоборот, последние несколько лет держит курс на дедолларизацию, отказывается и от доллара, от евро в международных расчетах. Вот. Как вы оцениваете этот процесс, насколько выгодным стал взаиморасчет России и ее экономических партнеров в рублях и национальных валютах дружественных стран? Ну и если коснулись темы рубля, то вот, на ваш взгляд, какие факторы больше всего влияют на курс рубля, на его падение, на рост? Вот, от чего это больше всего сегодня зависит?
Да. Ну, первое, это, ну давайте начнем с Аргентины, чтобы потом к этому не возвращаться. Да, всем известно идея вновь избранного президента Аргентины перейти на доллар внутри страны. Это решение, суверенное решение каждой страны. Но во-первых, в Аргентине инфляция, по-моему, где-то 143%. И поэтому, да, очень много проблем.
Of the president-elect of Argentina to use the US dollars within the country. This is a sovereign decision of each state. First of all, the inflation in Argentina is about 143%. And there are numerous problems. And even the previous authorities were talking about that they have issues with paying back the loans that had been issued to Argentina from various sources. So the logic here is clear. However, this would mean a significant loss of the national sovereignty. If the current Argentinian authorities see no other solution in this financial conundrum, the decision is up to them. However, this would mean a significant loss of their sovereignty. Now, the next point. There is also a social and economic component of such decisions. You're from the RBC channel. You specialize in these kinds of stuff. You're all specialists and experts. You'll know what I'm talking about, and the citizens will understand. There's nothing complicated in what I'm about to say. Even the use of the US dollar when calculating your national currency exchange rate may result in serious social and economic consequences. Back in the day, Argentina went through great turmoil relating to their finances and their banking issues. Now look what's going to happen if they only use the dollar, or if they directly link their national currency to the US dollar. They're trying to solve their domestic economic problems. And all governments are always taking into account their social obligations to the citizens. And by the way, I am satisfied to know that the Russian government is dealing with its obligation. Despite the rising expenses for the defense and security, we are fully compliant with all our obligations to the citizens, 100%. Some might say we're not doing enough and more should be done. We were talking to the Republic of Komi about the problems with relocation and so on. But the fact that the state is giving its promises and we stay true to our promises. Now, speaking of the US dollar, they have certain obligations. The retirement benefits, the state employee salaries, and so on and so forth. Generally, there is not enough money. So what would it mean if they started using the dollars? They have their national currency, the peso, and a tool to affect the inflation. That doesn't work perfectly, but still they have the means to balance the healthy economy and their social obligations. Now, if they switch to a foreign currency, they can't print their own money. There's only one way to deal with the inflation: to cut the social expenditure, to cut it everywhere, to cut the salaries, to cut the retirement benefits, the medical expenses, the road infrastructure, the security, and so on. There is no other way if they renounce their national currency. And any government taking such decisions would find itself in a very complicated situation from the point of view of domestic political stability. If they're ready for that, that's their sovereign right. The country is independent and they may take their own decisions. Speaking of us, you see, we're rejecting that. We're not. However, we've been experiencing problems with the transactions in foreign currencies. And by the way, they're shooting themselves in the leg by doing that. They are blocking our access to the US dollars and the euro as universal reserve global currencies. First of all, the US dollars. In 2021, if memory serves me right, we were servicing our experts and we were using 87% of foreign currencies in these transactions. So the US dollars and the euros. The ruble only accounted for 11 or 13%. and the Chinese yuan accounted for 0.4%. As of September this year, the figures are as follows. The rubles accounts for 40%. The yuan accounts for 33%. The overall use of the US dollar and the euro is 24%. It went down from 87 to 24. Why did they do this? They shot themselves in the leg. Is it bad for us? No, it's not. The more we use the national currencies in our economic transactions, the better for us. This increases our sovereignty and our opportunities. So what defines the exchange rate? The exchange rate depends on the market conditions, on the price on our export goods, and it relies on the domestic consumption and domestic demand, which is growing. There is also one more aspect. By the way, there was a decree that was meant to regulate the exchange rate situation, and it also played its own role and made the contribution. What was this about? In the previous years, it didn't take any restrictions. We used to have enough information from the countries that were receiving the majority of our exports, and it was clear for us where the capital is moving.
Now we do not receive any information. They closed everything for us. The government and the central bank do not see what is happening with the finances that our those who export receive from exporting. The central bank and the government now have a legitimate desire to see how everything is accumulated, where money is moving. So these elements of control are being introduced. I think that everything is becoming normal, and if everything is temporary. Well, but the financial situation is stable, and the main thing is to ensure this stability and predictability. In my opinion, we are reaching this goal today. Let's have a question from the hall. We haven't asked anyone from that sector. Can we ask someone from Kuban? Can I please participate also in this? Hello, Mr. President, Zhmutsky Maxine from Krasnodar territory. This year, the resorts of Kuban reached a historical record. 17.5 million tourists arrived to our region. It's only in summer, and now there is an active winter period. This is a burden for the infrastructure, first of all, to the transport because of the closed airports. Is there a federal plan to develop transport access to this region, maybe railways, highways? Just yesterday, there was information that on the 15th of December, tomorrow, there will be a test flight to the airport of Krasnodar. If everything is good, our Krasnodar airport will be opened. Is it true? Thank you. Please sit down. As for the airports, the main criteria is security. Ensuring security of people. This is an absolute priority if we are speaking about opening airports. This also goes about that, and we will act. But first we have to see the situation and analyze it. As for the development of transportways, development of aerial transport, about railways, highways, everything is being developed. The main thing we have to do right now is to create an effective structure that will deal with it, that would create a good business model for development. Everything is possible. The government and the initiators of this process are working on that, thinking about that. They are providing proposals. I'm speaking about Sberbank. The government is also included in this work. If there is a highway between St. Petersburg and Moscow, it will take a little bit more than 2 hours to get to the city, and in Moscow people need more time to go from one part to the other. And as for the south, Krasnodar, Kuban, Stavropol territory and other regions, Crimea, this is also important. That is why we are starting to work on this track, and I hope it will be effective in the future. As for the development of transport for the passengers, it is rising. If we're speaking about passenger transport, aerial transport for passengers, it's more than 16%. Then go railway transport, 10% more. And as for cars, buses, there is a rise of 6.4, 6.5%. So the volume of passenger transport is increasing dramatically. All those who participate in this process have to think about the coming tourist season, to do everything to ensure the interest of the people to develop the internal tourism. It is developing already at a good pace, and I would like to thank everyone who works in this sphere, those who work in Kuban. Thank you for increasing the quality of their work, and I hope it will continue. Let's have one more question. Please, there is a person in the first row, live. The first row, yes. Alexander Yunashel, live. There are a lot of military correspondents here, and it is demanded a lot from them. But there are some articles of the criminal code. For killing, there is 12 years, and sometimes 14 years are given to extortion on the internet. For instance, let's take a history of journalists. There is a case with the bank with the banker Ushakov. So what are you saying? You are trying to justify this journalist? No, I'm not trying to justify anyone. I'm just giving the facts. Let's speak about her actions. Maybe we should change some articles of the criminal code. Maybe we should change the limits of the limits. When is this limit? When the criminals are really punished, and when we are starting witch hunt? Well, I do not know all the details of the situation. What has she done? What the journalist Bayazitova, what has she done? Maybe she was working for the opposition. Or what has she done to hunt for her? No one is hunting her. Lawyers know that law is dura est lex, and the law is dire one. And I know that there are different crimes and sometimes 12, 14 years are given to the people. I know about this, but I was really shocked. It's too much, and it is obvious. In many countries, economic crimes, tax crimes, anti-monopoly crimes, fighting cartels, these imprisonment terms are being summed up and people receive up to 100 years. Why is this happening? Because the society and the legislators think that at some stage of the development of the society, of the economy, the social threat of these actions is so big that legislators think that the adequate reaction is needed to stop such illegal actions. Let's take this case and other cases. I am a citizen, and I also have questions. Why would we put someone, what would we imprison someone for 14 years? There was an ex-minister, and he received like 19 years of imprisonment for some violations. What was done by him and by this woman is bad, but giving them 19 years of imprisonment is too much. So legislators have to think about that. It is necessary to think about this. But there is still this law, and we need to implement it. We know there is a film that we love very much. The station, Belarusian station, where Papanov represents an enterprise, and he is always in a confrontation with a young director. He asks him to violate some kind of instruction. And the hero of Papanov says, "You're so young and energetic. Maybe you are right. Then go and make everything to cancel this instruction. And still, if there is this instruction, I'll do everything to implement it." The stability of the legal system is important, and the society understands how it works and how the society evaluates what was done. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't change anything. I agree with you. I'll ask the legislators, the State Duma, to make another evaluation and to react. I agree with you. Mr. President, we're working live. We have been working for 2 years. Let's just listen to other questions. They are not usual ones. For instance, Yaroslav from St. Petersburg. Today, our country and you personally are being insulted. For instance, maybe in the future, a person from a German village will say, well, Putin was doing everything correctly. What do you think about all the world that is against you? And have you ever played chess with someone recently? And what can you say about the celebrations? There are many questions. Well, the first one was about a person from Germany. Another one was about stress, about motivation, how you preserve it. And another question was about playing chess. Have you played chess with someone recently? And what do you recommend the Russians to do during long celebrations? Why only speaking about a German town? I know that not only in German towns, but in many other towns in Europe and the US and other regions of the world, many people think that everything we're doing is correct. We're not afraid to fight for our national interests. And we're not interfering into other interests. This is the first thing. We have a lot of supporters all over the world that support and protect our traditional values. There is a great number of them, and there are more and more of them. The number is rising exponentially. As for the stress, how to deal with it, how to deal with the situation when we are attacked, the sense of duty. I'm saying it without any pathos. During years, I have accustomed to the fact that we need to strive to choose the main thing and do everything to reach our objectives. without paying attention to anything else. Of course, we need to have a wide vision to analyze everything, but we should be confidently moving towards our objective. I'm confident of what I'm doing. As for the chess, well, I have recently asked a young boy, well, let's play chess. And he said, okay, let's do it. And I asked him, what do you think, I will win? And he looked at me, well, possibly not. Well, not possibly. So we should always work and to improve. I'm trying to do that. What about the new year? I think we should pay attention to our family, do something together, find some common cause, go to theaters, exhibitions, do sports, be active. And it's good to spend this celebration with the family. We receive a reaction to the questions that we receive. There is a call, Crimeans that go to the governor's school, and they are ready to go to the gym and to repair it in Crimea.
I think the same response is expected to this matter. This is not a new topic, however, there are new manifestations. The issues with higher prices for a certain product. It is very sad to buy eggs in our country. Coming from Tomsk, Anastasia from Ivana is asking whether these are special golden eggs from a golden goose. And there is also a question from Krasnodarsky region. Dear President, my favorite president, my name is Irina Okopova. I'd like to appeal to you. I'd like to ask you to use your influence. Right now, a dozen of eggs is costing from 180 up to 220 rubles. Where are these prices coming from? Chicken breasts used to be 165 rubles per kilogram. Right now, it's 350. Chicken wings, 165, today 250. Please take mercy on retired people. We don't have millions received in pensions. Please do something about it. It's too bad that you're doing this only once a year. We need to have a 3 times a year hotline calling so that people can appeal to you. Thank you so much, and I hope that you'll help me. Dear Irina, you mentioned that we're doing this only once a year. However, believe me, I've just spoken quite recently to the agricultural minister asking about egg prices. They're saying that everything's fine with these eggs. And he spoke very honestly. And I said that citizens have issues with that egg prices, 40% price hike, as well as chicken meat. Well, what happened is that we have a certain increase, it's not that much, but increase in salaries. So there is higher demand. So that used to be a rather cheap source of protein. It's very popular. I'm very happy to eat a sunny side up. I could eat a dozen of them at breakfast. Well, what happened is that there is greater demand. However, the production did not. Second, import was not allowed in the necessary scale. Now we have proposals coming in from Turkey. We have good relations, especially economic relations and in agricultural sphere with other countries. Belarus is offering. However, it wasn't opened in time. We need to do that within Eurasian Economic Union, and I think the decision was recently made, and well, it must be done in December. And the situation, without a doubt, will improve. I truly hope that it will happen so, because at least 2 weeks ago we had this conversation with the Minister of Agriculture. I'm very sorry. Please accept my apologies for that. This is a shortcoming in the work of the government. Some people say that it's not so, but I do believe that it is so, that we did not allow for a greater scale of import, hoping that they can earn more money, I guess. I promise that the situation will come back. Utilities prices are also concerning our citizens. Some people are saying that the light at the end of the tunnel is now higher in price right now. Some people are saying that the utilities are growing higher than the pensions, greater than 7%. Would like to... Mr. President, in 2024, we retired people are going to have an increase of pensions by 7.5%. At the same time, since June 2024, Novosibirsk is going to increase the utilities prices from 9 up to 14%. That means those 7.5% will be annihilated as for our increase in pensions. I'd like to give you the document proving that, coming from our governor. With respect, yes. Well, our counterpart did not present him, Vladimir Leontiev. Mr. Leontiev, I agree with that. I'll look at the situation. I can see it on screen. Indeed, the utility prices, there is something happening in Novosibirsk. We'll analyze the situation. Indeed, the pensions are going to be adjusted for inflation by 7.5%, but I hope that will be higher than the inflation rate. But what I wanted to point out is that we have adjusted quite recently, I think in December 2022, we have adjusted the pensions by 10%, 10-something%. Then in spring, there was yet another adjustment of 4.5% adjustment for inflation. And since the beginning of this year, we're going to have yet another increase by 7.5%. However, the utility prices were not increased since June last year, and the increase is planned only in July 2024. That means that the utility prices have been the same for 1.5 years, and there were 5 adjustments of pensions. And overall, that means more than 23% of pension adjustment. It seems so, yes. Naturally, everything should be done timely. The prices, utility prices, should be increased step by step, and there should be advanced adjustment for inflation of the income of the citizens. There is yet another thing that should be noted here. There is a rule, according to the law, that if the utility expenses of a family, of a household, exceed 22%, then the household has the right to receive a subsidy. And hundreds of thousands of people have used this rule last year in 2022. I think this year the same applies. In some regions, there is even a lower threshold, not 22%, but if the household is spending up to 15% of their income on utilities, 15 or 20%, they can receive the subsidy. But we need to take a look at the parameters, what's happening in Novosibirsk, of course, I'll do that. Is that correct that for a very simple service, utilities, you need to pay a commission to the bank? There are a lot of questions like that. Well, I don't think that's right, especially if it applies to retired people. The decision has just been made. The commission should not be taxed coming from the retired people. That's something new. I think we've forgotten about our audience here. Let's give the floor to the Baikal-Amur main line. They will help you to hold the mic. Blagoveshensky, our gate to China, Irina Voroshilova from Amurskaya Pravda newspaper. Mr. President, our question is the following. Next year, we'll celebrate since 50-year anniversary of the construction site of the century, Baikal-Amur mainline. That used to be its name. Now, this mainline is divided between two railways. Do you think that it's time to bring back this BAM railroad? Now we have BAM 2, BAM 3 railroads. They're very important for us. What do you mean to bring it back on the map? What do you mean by that? There is no BAM right now. There used to be, indeed, a BAM railroad, Baikal-Amur mainline. That used to be the name. And now this mainline is divided between East Siberian Railway and part of Far Eastern Railway. So, per se, there is no BAM on the map. And now there is an organization with hundreds of thousands of people from the post-Soviet space that suggesting to create a Baikal-Amur mainline from Tashkent station to Soviet Haven, and that would allow to speed up implementation of BAM 2 and BAM 3 projects and give beginning to building of new railroads in the east of the country. You know, I don't think I've ever paid attention to the fact that for the first time I'm hearing that there is such an issue that BAM mainline is divided between different railroads, because still it all belongs to the Russian Railways company. The head of the company never mentioned that there is such an issue. Still, I'll have a conversation with him as well as Minister of Transport Savelyev and with other people as well. If they think that it needs to be brought under one roof, I don't mind. I understand that making it one main line from Tashkent station to Sovgavin station, well, I understand the idea, but it should be initiated by the Ministry of Transportation or the Russian Railways company. No one ever posed this question. Well, it's okay. I'll have a conversation with the relevant authorities, with the Russian railroads and with the Ministry of Transportation. I was never against it. If it's necessary, well, why not do it? For the first time, I'm hearing that. Would it help new construction projects? I don't think I really understand how it can help that. They're always having trouble trying to figure out who will be building what and on what conditions. Well, that Deputy Prime Minister Kusnulin is responsible for that. In general, I'm aware of what is happening. I hope that the work is being done. It's hard to do. The conditions are quite tough, but all the goals will be achieved. I promise you that I'll take a look at that issue, but it's the first time that I'm hearing that there is such an issue, especially if it's coming from those who were responsible for it, from the BAM community. Yes, the 50-year anniversary should be celebrated properly. Thank you very much. Let's respect other people. Take a look at how many questions need to be asked. Can we go back to BRICS Tatarstan? What kind of questions do you have? Artur Karlilov, Tatar Inform Media. As we know, BRICS will take place in Kazan, in our city. The first question is, what kind of impact will the BRICS will have on the rules-based world order? First and foremost, Western rules, as we understand. The second thing, the choice of Kazan, the capital of Tatarstan. Does it have to do with the fact that now Kazan is becoming a certain diplomatic hub in relations with Eastern countries and the Muslim countries? Well, that's not the case. It has to do with the fact that Tatarstan is developing very well, and Kazan is one of the best examples of such development. The conditions, good conditions, have been created by the previous president and the current president. There, Mr. Minikhanov is working very well. I remember when I traveled with Mr. Shaimiev, we were looking at houses, and you know what made me happy back then? They couldn't even be called houses, but they were more like earth huts. But when we came in, it was very clean. I still have that feeling of respect for the people who were living very modestly, but they were very clean and very organized. That's the level of the culture of people. It amazes me, and it's reason for my respect. And I think it has to do with the successful development of Tatarstan and the capital of Tatarstan, the city of Kazan.
Undergoing steady development and being in a good shape with well-developed infrastructure, Kazan hosted a number of major international sports and political events, and naturally it becomes a gravity center or a hub for multilateral meetings. And Tatarstan is a multi-ethnic and multi-religious republic with a well-established balance between the creeds. It is a good model for the rest of the country, so this is why we opted for this city. And with respect to the rules-based world order, these rules are inexistent because they change on a daily basis depending on political expediencies and immediate interests of some of the stakeholders. How shall that impact the situation? Well, things will develop in the necessary, in the right direction. It will demonstrate that there are very many forces in the world, very many powerful nations that want to live guarded not by the unwritten rules, but rather, on the contrary, by the rules of the United Nations Charter and other statutory tenets, and being guided by the interests thereof and of their partners, without establishing military alliances, create the context for effective, mutually advantageous development. This will be at the heart of Russia's presidency in BRICS. What airplanes, what aircraft shall we use to fly to that summit? Because a heavy blow was dealt to the aviation and aircraft construction. In past years, you obliged Russian airlines to buy and purchase Russian aircraft, and now they are queuing to buy these. But still, we are now using foreign-made aircraft. Is it safe? Because any news about an air incident or accident cause outrage. And now a phone in from Maxim Saltykov from Moscow. Can you hear us loud and clear? Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Maxim. I'm a cadet of the aviation school, military school. What is to happen with our civil aviation in the current geopolitical context amid sanctions, and our airlines are not allowed to purchase foreign-made aircraft? MS-21 and IL-96 are 300 only being certified, and it will take a lot of years for them to be commissioned, and the lifetime of the currently operating aircraft is coming to an end. And another question, very few graduates come to work to our airlines, although we're trained for that. And in a nutshell, shall we fly in future, and what shall we use? What aircraft shall we use? We will definitely keep flying. With respect to foreign-made aircraft, Pavel has been correct in saying that we used to have disputes with our airlines that procured without any reasonable limitation too many of foreign-made airplanes. They had their own rationale because they cited the noise levels and the fuel consumption levels. Lots of arguments behind that, but probably it would have been better that proper market for Russian-made aircraft had been established. We have had some achievements, but our fleet is overloaded with foreign makes, and I think our companies acted correctly. They did not respond to the unlawful action on the part of the leasing companies and operators, but no one wants to lose money in part of these aircraft. We repurchase, we buy them back, and they become the property of Russian airlines. We also need to enhance our own capability in aircraft building, and I hope that all the plans of ours, and we have around 1,000 aircraft in the pipeline until 2030, MS-21, and re-equipping the current aerial vehicles with Russian-made engines, PD, and we should start manufacturing PD-35 engine with more powerful thrust, and we will have the opportunity to increase the number of long-range aircraft, including Il-96-400, which already is in operation, the cargo version of it. It's a bit longer, so we must work hard, and we have the potential to implement all our plans. I hope that we will deliver on all of the plans of ours, and we will have aircraft at hand for the pilots and passengers. And with respect to small scale or regional aviation, we also must develop that capability. A question from the hall. I saw New York Times. Please, no, Lin Xinhua first, and then New York Times. Good afternoon, Mr. President. It's my pleasure to ask you a question. Xinhua, Chinese news agency. 2 questions to you. The first one, as we know, Russia is to preside in BRICS next year. What meaning, what importance does cooperation and coordination between BRICS and Russia and China in BRICS have? And what do you expect from the development of the Chinese-Russian ties next year? Well, we know. Please have a seat. We know, and I have to repeat, that our level of interaction with the PRC is unparalleledly high, and we hope to reach $200 billion of mutual trade next year. It's going to be on top $200 billion, even probably shortly this year or early next year. And in the first quarter, we will attain the $220 billion of bilateral trade. And the increase will be 31%. It was 31% last year, and the growth will be 30% this year. We have been pursuing our economic ties in various sectors steadily. We have been diversifying our ties. We have been developing infrastructure and bridge building and high-tech cooperation also, and we will act in this vein. And an incentive, an impetus was provided during the March visit paid by the President of China, Xi Jinping. And we agreed that we would develop relations in 8 main areas, and we signed the relevant documents. And the government of Russia and that of PRC started implementing our plans that we designed with my friend and a friend of our country, President Xi, actively. We have been working intensively, stably, reliably. As regards BRICS, well, I will not say anything new. This vector has been reinforced, and the Russian-Chinese ties are one of the main guarantors behind the global stability. We see what has been happening around Russia and China, and we see some attempts of the West to switch NATO eastwise, and that definitely is beyond their statutory scope. North Atlantic is called North Atlantic. Why do they want to come to Asia? Still they do. They're trying to instigate, incite the situation. They're establishing new political alliances and military alliances and with different makeups. Us in China don't do anything of the kind. We do cooperate in military sphere, in the economic and humanitarian sectors also, but we do not establish any alliances, and our friendship is not meant against third countries. It's to benefit us, most importantly, not anyone, not being against anyone else. What we see from the West, well, they're trying to make friends against someone, and we have been watching that closely, and we will respond on time and effectively. There should be no doubts about that. And now, New York Times, as we promised, well, in the middle.
Газета New York Times.
New York Times. Gally Hopkins, for more than a year, Western correspondents and journalists could not attend such events, and I'm so glad that we can participate. It's all Peskov's fault. But let me please, I'm a democratic person. I'm a democratic man. Well, we'll be talking that. We'll be discussing that. Can I ask a question in English, please?
My colleague, Wall Street Journal correspondent Evan Gershkovich, has been held in Lefortovo prison without a trial for 37 weeks. His detention was today again, the extension on his detention was today again upheld. Paul Whelan, another U.S. citizen, has been in prison for nearly 5 years. A spokesman for the U.S. State Department, which considers both men wrongfully detained, recently said that Moscow had rejected what it called a substantial offer to return both of them to the United States. Is that true? What will it take to bring them home? And do you think that finding an agreement with the United States to bring them home to their families can be a way to improve the severely strained relations between the United States and the Russian Federation? Thank you.
Well, you have mentioned that your colleague from an Austrian agency, and Austrian was an Austrian journal. Well, he is detained without trial. He has been in detention without trial, and you said that his detention was extended. That was done upon a ruling by the court, so it would be inappropriate to say that it was done without any trial or court intervention. So there is some court ruling behind that. With respect to possible returning home or extradition of these two men back home, why not bring them back home? Why have they committed offences on Russian soil? They ought not to have done that. Well, it's not that we decline to send them home. No, we want to come to terms, and these agreements must be mutually acceptable and should be okay for both of the parties. And we have contacts with our American partners on that. We're in touch with them, and we pursue dialogue. It is not at all easy. I will not delve into detail, but I think that we speak the language that both sides understand, mutually understandable language. I hope we'll find a mutually acceptable solution, but the American side should also listen to us and make a decision that would be satisfactory for the Russian side also. Well, humanitarian grounds must underpin these agreements and decisions, definitely. I agree with you. Mr. President, now we are in the winter and switching and swapping from a topic to another, and everybody is ailing, and our Russian medical agency has been registering an upswing in COVID and measles. Measles has become 300 times more active, the incidence of it, and probably there is a shortage of vaccines. And a letter from the Samara region that they don't have vaccines against measles and other diseases for more than 4 months. And a lot of our nationals need Western medicines that are not available here, and there are sometimes no analogues, no substitutes. And how can we adapt, and whether we receive, whether we are successful in that or not?
Thank you. Speaking of the vaccines for measles, parotitis, and rubella, I think that this is quite a technical problem that we've been experiencing, and this is quite regrettable. Here's the reason. The reason is related to eggs, as weird as it may seem. The measles vaccine production is based on the use of egg protein, and to ensure the sufficient supply for the medical production, we need high-quality raw materials, and we need access to that. And we didn't ensure that in due time. That's the first point. Now, second point. The decisions have been taken, and I think very soon this will stop being a problem, and a solution will be made. You mentioned the three-component vaccine for measles, rubella, and parotitis, and yes, I think the solution will be found as soon as possible. There is no problem with the vaccination in the vaccine supply. A solution will be found very soon. And by the way, the surge in the measles is seen all over the world, and it happens every 4 years. What is the reason? Unfortunately, the reason is the low level of vaccination in the countries of origin of labor migrants, including Ukraine, since millions of people have moved from Ukraine into Russia. The vaccination level in Ukraine is very low. It was like that, and now it's even lower. And that's an actual problem for us. And there was our own technical issue that we experienced. But I hope, and I was told, and I'm being told by our specialists, that solutions have been found. Yes, we know that a number of companies have left the Russian market, and that is a problem. However, among the vital medications, I think there's a list of 14 positions on the list. And our industry is active. We're not closing down the imports of medication. Our healthcare ministry and the government are aware of the problems. A special commission has been established on the import substitution. The commission is active, and the commission assures me that they understand the situation. They are doing and will do everything to ensure the interests of the people who require certain medications. Speaking of the substitution, yes, sometimes certain medications don't work for a certain person. The industry should be working, the doctors should be working. Sometimes there are certain psychological changes when people get used to a certain type of medication or a certain brand name. But it's important that a person can trust or believe in a certain medication. We will produce our own positions. We will not rely wholly on the imports. The primary healthcare is also important. You are mentioning the large cities and small cities, that there is a lack of doctors and nurses. Let's call Yegor Perminov from the Sverdlovsk region, from the Rekhtinsky village. Yegor, if you hear us, please ask your question. Hello, distinguished Mr. President. My name is Yegor. I'm from the Sverdlovsk region, Rekhtinsky village. We have a problem in healthcare, or rather lack thereof. The authorities are actively pursuing the infrastructure projects, but not the hospitals. The hospitals are in complete ruin. The salaries and the condition are very poor. Most of the buildings were built in the Soviet times, and they're collapsing in front of our eyes. We cannot receive good medical care. We're asking for your help. This was the Sverdlovsk region. I will look into that, definitely. I will see what we can do. This is the village of Rekhtinsky, not far from Yekaterinburg. I will write it down. We will deal with that. There is a program. A program for the primary healthcare system. We're allocating quite a big deal of financement. We have already bought 14,000 medical vehicles. We are building the primary care facilities, and I think the volumes are still not enough, and we will extend the program. This is a part of the future presidential program. We will extend the program to ensure the improvement in the primary healthcare system. Yes, we will do that. Much has been done already, in fact. Judging by what we see now, we're not doing enough. Let me repeat. We are aware of the problem, and it is no accident that we created a specialized program to improve the primary healthcare system, and we will continue pursuing it. In this regard, it is most important to pay special attention to that. And the program says this, too. We have to pay special attention to the rural areas. More than a half of all the financement of the program goes into the rural primary health care, and we will keep doing that. And we will take your address and your suggestion into account. Let's get back to the journalists. Let's take a question from RT on this side. They're sitting just at the edge, quite unnoticeable. Thank you, Mr. Peskov, Mr. Putin. Thank you, Murat Gazdeev, Russia Today TV channel. A relevant question for us as an international TV channel, and a question relevant for our multinational country. What do you think of the growing nationalism, both in Russia and all over the world? Not just nationalism, but also anti-Semitism. This is not a problem on the front line. In the trenches, we have people all together, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and they all work together. But as soon as you leave the war zone, you see this, both in Russia and all over the world. You see this as a current pressing issue. What should we do, Mr. Putin? You know, there's been a recent public poll by the Russian Center. Please take your seat. The polls say that 96% of the Russian citizens believe that the interconfessional and interethnical agreement in our country is a great competitive advantage of Russia compared to other parts of the world. And it is true. First of all, this is due to, yes, I'll go back to the topic of our traditional values. This is, first of all, due to our traditional values. the traditional belief systems make a great contribution in preserving the situation, in preserving the relations between the various ethnicities and religions. Speaking of the spike in anti-Islamism sentiments, anti-Semitism and Russophobia and other sentiments like that, I must say that it is true that these trends are on the rise. And here's the reason, as I see it. I believe that the people are experiencing certain types of injustice. Take a look at Gaza. All over the Islamic world, there's been a certain reaction, and therefore there has been a surge in the number of people who are quite radical. The growth is apparent. The numbers are growing. There's nothing good about that, rest assured, but still this is the result of the policy of certain elites. This is the result of the issues of justice, or rather lack of justice for the Palestinian issue for decades. The reaction of the Islamic world and therefore the growth of certain phobias. This is very bad. In our country, as I mentioned, the confessions, the traditional religions and values play an important role, but still, it is also important to remember that we are pursuing a balanced domestic policy as well as a balanced international policy. And we are doing what we can in order to ensure justice in all the areas, and I believe that the people really appreciate that. And that is why the situation in our country is also balanced. Speaking of anti-Russian sentiment, this is one of the vectors of the fight against Russia. Yes, this is a thing in the world. Domestically, we should do everything to ensure this doesn't appear in our country. We should immediately stop any attempts to destabilize the society from within. And that's what we've been doing. TF1, I think, is that the French TV channel? Yes, TF1. In the middle sector, please.
Been in contact for a very long time with Emmanuel Macron. Could you tell us how do you perceive France and its president today? Do you plan to meet him once again? On what terms?
Yes, we have, and we used to have very good working relations with them. I visited France and Mr. Macron visited Russia. We have always had a very rich agenda, both bilaterally and multilaterally. And we are ready to continue our cooperation with France. But at a certain point, the French president ceased all relations with us. We didn't stop it. I didn't. He did. If there's an interest, we're ready to pursue that. If there's no interest, we can do without them. That's it. There's nothing unusual here. We are not avoiding any contacts, rest assured, but if the European countries and the French president in particular are unwilling to talk to us, there's no issue here. If he says no, it's fine for us. We have our own things to do. If they're interested, we are ready. We have the Komsomolskaya Pravda. No, let's go to the Magadan region instead. And please, do not be so loud, or we will have quite a mess here. I'm sorry, but practice shows that this works. Thank you, Alexander Orlov, Kolyma Plus channel, Magadan region. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. President. First of all, let me know that the region of Magadan can really feel the support of the Russian government. We see that the federal projects in our region are being implemented, and this has a positive effect. And this has a positive effect on the attitude of our population towards the president. And this also affects my own sentiments. We all support your decision to run for the election next year. As long as I remember, you've always been in power. I could say it like that. Thank you. Now let me move to the question. The first question is as follows. For our region, it's important to feel connected to the rest of the country. Few people from the Far East and the Magadan region can spend their vacation in their own region. But there are certain difficulties. Magadan has 3 subsidized travel directions to Petropavlovsk, to Blagoveshchensk and to Moscow. However, Khabarovsk and Novosibirsk are not part of the subsidized travel programs, and a single trip can take over 24 hours. And it can be quite costly for us. For example, it's much cheaper for us to come to Moscow rather than to Khabarovsk, which is very close to us. And people like me, who have no children, have no disabilities, and those who are older than 22 do not get any discounts. I suggest that you get some children to get your discounts. That's the solution, I think. Then you will have access to the reduced rates. You're such a nice young man. I don't think you'll have issues. Oh, thank you. So, coming back to my question, would it be possible to expand the number of subsidized travel routes from the Far East? I think this would also help us improve the tourism. So that's the first question. And the second one, I think everyone from the North and the Far East can tell that we also receive the additional benefits to our salaries. That's no secret, and the regions are choosing their own benefits. But overall, it takes about 5 years to get the maximum benefits.
We people who were born and who work in the Far East, as well as the experts that come to this region, have to reach this coefficient. We do not receive it. Can we return to the legislation that existed before? Those who were born in the Far East and in the extreme North could receive this coefficients. Could we return to that legislation? Yes, I understand this question. It is being discussed in the government. This is what I would do. I wouldn't wait for the term or for working or living in the region. It would make people stay in the Far East, which is useful for the country, and Russia needs it. This is just the problem of the fiscal capacities and the federal budget. We will think about that. I'll ask the government to return it to the agenda. As for the plane tariffs, they will be prolonged. It is usually done at the end of the year after my consultations with Aeroflot, first of all, and other companies with the Ministry of Transport. We will prolong these tariffs. I understand you very well. It would be good to widen them. It will require additional financing from the budget. We will think about this, but we will prolong it, rest assured. But the volume is enormous, and the Far East is an entire world, separate world. It's the distances are so big that it is really hard to move around the region, but we'll try to solve this problem. Thank you. I see Veliki Novgorod. There is a woman sitting there, and, well, she acted like she has nothing to do with it. Natalia Khmelyova, the regional TV. We have a question about healthcare in our region. The situation is improving. We are buying equipment. Young experts are being supported, but considerable part of mortality is connected to the cardiac diseases, heart diseases. There is a question about federal program.